when I read the title of this focus, medievalist bibliophilia and the question for originals, I thought of a page in which Gramsci defined some topic as brevi cenni sull'universo, short remarks on the universe, and I was really embarrassed in thinking that I was obliged to answer about the universe. The two interventions of my friends have, in a way, helped me because they didn't put real question. I am obliged to answer, but they made a panorama about some of my interests and activities. At the first glance, disconnected, because you can be a medievalist without being a bibliophile. It's enough you go in the libraries. If you were a medievalist, you want to read the manuscript, you are a bibliophile, you want to steal them. That is the profound difference between the two jobs. And one can be a bibliophile without being interested in Middle Ages and be interested in collecting books of the 18th century or Diderot's encyclopedia. So I am trying to jump over from one side and the other of my multifarious activity, because, see, I made a doctoral thesis on the Middle Ages, but then I was convinced to do something else, semiotics, philosophy of language, aesthetics, writing sometime on Middle Ages, but 2 years ago it was given to me the possibility to collect all my writings on the Middle Ages without limits of pages, and I succeeded in putting together 1,300 pages of writings on the Middle Ages. So I discovered that it was enough to have a chair, even I didn't write on my other books. So in a way, yes, I was in my life concerned with the Middle Ages. One of the most disturbing questions a journalist interviewing you is putting forth is why the Middle Ages and not another era. I usually respond, why did you marry this woman and not another one? It happens that you fall in love with a person, an historical period, a kind of art. There are bird watchers and bird hunters. There are two different vocations. And so there are people fascinated by the Middle Ages. Walter quoted a line of mine saying that I know the contemporary world only through the TV screen, while I have all the Middle Ages more profound and intimate knowledge. Yes, it is true, and it happened through books, obviously, in the same way in which we know better the psychology of Proust than the psychology of our fathers. A lot of characteristics of our fathers escaped us. We didn't know some of his secret problems or sorrows. With Proust, we know everything. Everything is important to know. Everything is important to know. And that can happen with the Middle Ages. I have a story in our countryside when collecting cotton branches and leaves. We made some bonfires, and those bonfires produced spurs that passed through the sky. And my wife, who is a nature lover, told me continuously, look at the spars. And I said, oh yes, like Monsieur Hulot, when the wife said, oh, un coquillage, and Monsieur Hulot throw the coquillage under his shoulders. Then, when I described the fire at the abbey of the name of the rose, my wife read the description of the fire and said, but you watched the spars. You described them very well. And I said, I didn't. But I know how a medieval monk could have seen them. and I describe them according to the psychology of a medieval monk. That is a way to live in an historical period, and then we come to the problem of history. Why to be interested in history, and especially why to be interested in history if you are a philosopher? It seems that once the philosophy department, I think at Princeton, a colleague of mine picked up an ad saying entry forbidden to historians of philosophy. There is, especially in this country, a great mistrust concerning history. I have written and edited 2 books, one called The History of Beauty and The History of Ugliness, that have been translated in 40 countries with this title. But in English, they are not History of Beauty and History of Ugliness. They are Beauty and Ugliness. History could not be solved. There was a certain problem with history. The 3rd book of the series just published is History of the Legendary Lands, but in English it will be the Book of Legendary Lands. Well, it's important to know that the history, how the legendary lands were thought of at the beginning and then until Rennes le Chateau and Brown. There is this mistrust concerning history. And I remember a discussion with a colleague of mine, analytic philosopher, not continental, obviously, who said, why should I be interested in the logic of Stoics? I have all the handbooks of contemporary logic that are very well developed. And so, if there is something new to invent, okay, go. Why to know what they say? My answer said, first of all, because it's very important to know the errors of the past, to avoid them. Second, because frequently, not knowing what was said in the past, you risk continuously to invent, as we say in Italy, the hot water. You don't know that something was already said in the very... so you waste your time in inventing something that has been already invented. But that a medieval thinker is a modern thinker. Not at all. My problem was to know exactly what a medieval thinker said in his own historical context, and only in this way we can understand how this thinker can teach something to us, not to transform it in a contemporary thinker, but revisiting his time, his question, his context. That's my middle ages. You said, yes, a vice, a sort of corruption of my mind. I could have made the same with the Renaissance, with the 19th century. I did it with the Middle Ages. Don't ask me. There are people who waste their time in escalating the Mont Blanc. I had never done that in my life. I'm absolutely not interested in this. Why I feel in the Middle Ages, as both Domenico and Walter said, that citing an old pages of mine, I feel to be walking among the cloisters and under the walls of the Gothic and Roman abbey and cathedral, and I feel that even in the Yale Gothic, even being a postmodern writer, I feel the ironic aspect of the Yale Gothic. But it's a way to have our little Middle Ages that probably for many students here is only the Hogwarts players who like to live again in the Potter universe. What links my interest for the Middle Ages with the rare books collection? I don't know exactly, because I started to collect old rare books only after having written The Name of the Rose. Also because to collect rare books is very expensive, because The Name of the Rose, I didn't have money enough to buy them. After that, I said, since I got some money because of a book, I can spend it for other books, so the circle it's closed in a proper way. But if you read The Name of the Rose, you see that it is about a library and about a lot of books that appear there only as titles in a very ghostly way, but they are there. So there was before an interest of mine for all these material that at a certain moment it transformed in itself in bibliophilia, which is an erotic affair. Bibliophilia means that you want to possess the book. You cannot accept the idea that this book on Agnus is in the hands of Walter, but I must have another copy for me. I have finished my collection of the Tribus Impostoribus. I have one edition. First, to have it. Second, to touch it. There are books, collectors that dealing with 19th century books don't cut the pages in order to preserve the book such as it is when come out from the printing house. Well, in this sense, I have partly bibliophile because I want also to read my books. And sometimes to read them in a proper way and to make signs, I buy the anastatic edition, so I can work on the anastatic edition, but I have confidently the original on my table. Being interested in the content of ancient books, my collection doesn't concern necessarily medieval material, because people of that time had the bad habit not to print books, and so they had only manuscripts, which are a little more expensive, and I'm not an expert in manuscripts. But as Walter has already stressed, it concerns mainly fakes and wrong books. So I collect only books that don't say the truth. So no, I don't have Galileo. I have Ptolemy. Okay. Or I have a good collection of fakes, forgeries, and canulars, and things like that. Why this a passion for forgery? I have devoted many of my writings to forgery. Probably the first one was an important symposium in Germany on forgery in the Middle Ages. And after that, you see that the Middle Ages was concerned. As I knew that there was a symposium on forgery, my first idea was to study forgeries in the Middle Ages, because it was an epoch of a very arguable philology, in which it was very easy to circulate the donation of Constantine or the letter of Prester Jones. They were very able to produce forgeries, because sometimes they didn't believe they were forgeries. Sometimes an abbot of the Middle Ages, since he believed that his abbey had received certain privileges, but it was impossible to find the original documents, thought it was his faculty and his duty to produce a false document, because he was convinced that the false document proved the truth. So that they had a different notion of what a forgery could be and was. So I started with the forgeries in the Middle Ages, but then I wrote many essays on the concept of fake and authenticity and so forth. And my novel, apropos of my novel, well, the name of the rose is about the library full of every kind of books, including forgeries. My Baudolino was about a very important forgery, and Middle Ages apart, my Cemetery of Prague was about one of the most impressive and terrible and dangerous forgeries of our time, the protocols of the elders of science, because I wrote only once an essay trying to describe how forgeries have changed the world. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a horrible way, but they have influenced history. So why I was so seduced by forgery and lies? Well, once I defined the semiotics as the discipline that can explain why we can lie, or why we can say the opposite of the truth. I think that I was, and I am, interested in forgeries because I am interested as a philosopher in truth. Even being very embarrassed in defining what is truth. And I have discovered that while it's difficult to define what is truth, it's easier to define what is a lie, what is a fake. But in order to recognize something as a lie, you have to believe that somewhere there is something which is true. In this sense, I am not a relativist, even though I have very confused ideas about the truth. And probably is the reason why I was always so fascinated by the Middle Ages, an era in which they were so sure to have the truth that they didn't have doubts. Or if somebody had them, it was rapidly burned and so truth. So I discovered very late that the problem always I avoided to approach, always by circumscribing it, was concerning truth. But I was not so sure about which kind of truth. For instance, does the world exist? Was an interesting problem. On what does it mean to understand? And so once my mentor, that was a philosopher that did after his maturity, I think that for him, even I loved him very much, ripeness was not old. In his post-adult age, he became a little reactionary. And he told me, you know, we, in our life, each of us had and has only a single problem. And during his entire life, even by writing 200 books, is always pursuing the same basic topic. I thought, wow, reactionary is it? So there is no space for invention, no space. And when I reached my post-adult age, I discovered that he was right. The only problem is that I have not still detected what is my topic.